Hello everyone, in this video I'll give you a walkthrough of how you can use LLUMO AI to evaluate or debug your agentic AI systems, multi-agent systems and RAG systems. Now once you log into LLUMO, you will land onto this getting started page. Now here you can see a connect your app button, you just have to click on this button. Now here you are provided with some documentation of how you can actually integrate LLUMO SDK in your system. You have two options, Python and TypeScript, depending on which programming language you have used to make your agentic AI system. Now here are some prerequisites which are required to use the LLUMO AI features. Here goes the first step. Now you have to first install the LLUMO SDK in your environment. Now this is very important. You need actually your LLUMO API key to get all the services of LLUMO. Now you have three options again. There is one normal evaluate function which actually evaluates your data, the query, context and the output. And you just have to call this debug log function from LLUMO, and which takes your data, which will evaluate all the data that you have provided, which is basically the query, context and output, like how well the output was generated by the LLM model, whether it was hallucinated or whether there was any PII injections in your code. So it will detect and it will provide you a score to your data and as well as a reasoning of that score. Now in this video, I will be giving you a walkthrough of how you can actually use LLUMO SDK in your LangChain based agentic AI system. Now here is the complete documentation of how you can integrate LLUMO SDK in your LangChain based agentic AI system. First, you have to import some necessary modules from LLUMO SDK. Then you have to create a LLUMO logger by passing on your API key. You can take your API key from here. You just have to copy this and paste it over here. Then the second parameter is basically the project name. All your traces, all your runs will be shown in this project that you have, the name that you have passed in here. So you can take any name, all your traces, all your results will be shown in this project in your LLUMO account. Now you have to start a LLUMO session context, which is nothing but a session that will have traces of multiple runs. Now you'll start the session. Then after starting the session, once the session has been started, you have to start the LLUMO run, which will actually start the tracing process and all. So it takes a run name parameter. You can provide a name to this run, and you can just keep it empty if you want. LLUMO will handle that. And if you want to explicitly give a run name to your query, you can do that also. Now you have to create the LLUMO callback handler, which will actually handle all the tracings and all. And this is the main part which is actually responsible for performing the tracing and all. Now this agent.run is basically from LangChain, and you have to the callback that you have initialized here, you have to pass that callback in this parameter over here, and your tracing will be started. Now once all your queries are done, you can finally end this session context. So after every query, you have to first end this LLUMO run, and then once you are done with all the queries, you have to finally end this session context. I have created a sample agentic AI based chatbot system using Streamlit and LangChain. This chatbot has three tools. One is basically the get menu tool, which shows the menu, and second one is basically the add to cart tool, which add item to the cart based on the user query, and the third one basically removes item from the cart based on the user query again. Now I also played with a few queries to test my chatbot, and it includes a few basic queries and also some queries that that use the tool. So as you can see that I asked for the menu, and internally obviously the get menu tool have been called for that. And I asked for the menu, the agentic AI system showed me the whole menu. That was a success actually. Now after a few queries, I noticed that there was one tool which was actually this one, add to cart tool, that I have defined here. This is my second tool. This was failing again and again for some reason. And whenever I had asked something, whenever I had asked for adding something to the cart, the LLM responded with this type of response: agent stop due to iteration limit or time limit. Again, I've asked to add one sandwich and one Coke. Again, I got the same response, but I'm not getting why the tool, what's happening here and what tool is failing and why it's failing and how do I resolve it. So again, I've asked to add a cup of tea in this. Again, I've got the same response. I really don't know what why the tool is failing and what tool is failing and how do I solve it. And this is where LLUMO could be very helpful to you. Now we don't have to care much about this, we don't have to care much about the tool failures and all, because we have LLUMO installed. Now I'll show you step-by-step process how you can actually integrate the LLUMO SDK into similar kind of a system. Now let's move to the documentation again and see how we can actually integrate the LLUMO SDK in our system. So first we need to install LLUMO SDK by writing pip install LLUMO. I've already done this part. Now we will initialize our LLUMO API key first in our code. I'll just copy this code from here and I'll paste it in my LangChain code. I'll just keep it over somewhere here at the top. Okay, now we're done with our API key. Now the second part is basically the import. We'll copy this code from here. I'll just paste it here again. Now we have all the necessary modules imported. Now, moving ahead, we'll copy this particular code from here. This is responsible for creating a logger object, which takes your API key defined above and a project name. So I'll just copy this code and I'll paste it in my code. You have to paste this code right before you are making a model call. So I'll just paste it somewhere here. Now it takes my LLUMO API key. We have already defined our API key under this variable. You can take your own variable name, or you can either place the API key in your .env file. Now it takes a project name as well, and it can be any random name. This time I'm gonna take it as Streamlit dummy SDK. No. So all your results will be shown into this project in your LLUMO account. Now moving ahead, I'll copy rest of the code as well. So I'll copy this code from here and paste it right before this logger object. This is responsible for creating the session context, and it takes your logger that you have initialized here and also starts the session context once initialized. Now moving ahead again, so this particular code, we'll copy this particular code from here. This is responsible for performing the tracing and all. So it will start the tracing. For each query, you have to start a run. You have to start the run or start the logging. So right before you are providing the query to the model, you have to place this particular code. So in my case, this is where I am calling the model. So right above this, I'll paste this code, and it takes a run name, which is basically optional. If you want, you can give it, this run a name also, but this time I'm keeping it as default. I want LLUMO to handle that. Let's move further. And now this is the important part, that is basically your callback handler, and this is responsible for doing all the tracing and all. So I'll just copy this code and place it right before the start LLUMO run function. Now, next step is to pass this callback handler to the agent.run function. This is basically from LangChain, which is responsible for running your agentic system. So it takes a parameter named as callbacks, and it takes a list, and you have to supply this callback handler that you have initialized above into this particular parameter. So I'll just copy this. We actually need this only because we are already using this agent.run. Now I'll just pass it into this function as a new parameter, and you are done till here. Now, as you're starting a run for each of the query, you have to make sure that you also end the run after the query has been processed by the model. So right after you have generated the response, the LLM has generated the response successfully. You can place it. You can finally end the run. So once the response has been generated, I'll go back to the documentation and copy this code, which is responsible for ending the run. I'll paste it here. Now ensure that once all your queries has been processed or executed, you finally end the session. In my case, if the user inputs something like exit, I want the session to stop or end. So for ending the session, I'll just copy this code and paste it right over here once all my queries has been processed. So this is the full integration of our SDK, and let's see how it works. So after the integration, I have played with a few more queries so that we can actually trace what has happened internally. And let me just write a few more queries so that we can have more traces. So let me just copy this query again, and this time I'll ask for 4 coffees. And let's see if the error is still there. And if it is there, the LLUMO SDK will trace it. Okay, so the error is still there. It again says that agent stopped due to some iteration limit and all. Okay, let me just write one more query. Add 1 burger. Okay, so again we are getting the same kind of error, but now we don't have to care much about this because now we have already installed LLUMO SDK in our system. Now LLUMO have done all the tracing. Now we can just go back to the LLUMO, to our account, and here we have the logs option, which actually where you have to select all the from where you can select the project, and this is the same project that we have supplied in our SDK. So Streamlit dummy restaurant was the one, and it has all the traces, all the queries that we have run till now. So it has some successful runs also, but there are some critical errors also. Let's just go with any of these. So this explore actually shows the step-by-step breakdown of the whole trace. So it can be very helpful if you are storing the traces in your database. You can just copy this and you can do the further analysis, or you can just simply store it into your database. So it shows the complete step, how the query went to the final LLM call. So if you want, you can do the further analysis. You also have some KPI also over here, which actually shows you the KPI score and the reasoning. And this debug lens actually shows you the step-by-step breakdown of what has happened. Let's just go to some critical error and some failed query. Actually, we'll open this up. Okay, So it's a critical issue actually. So here you can see the step-by-step breakdown, what has actually happened internally, and you are also getting KPI score of each of these, which you can also get some further analysis. You can do some further analysis based on these KPI scores and all, and you can see that the add to cart tool execution failed for a second time. So actually, for the second time, the agent tried to execute this particular tool, but again it failed. So you get a summary over here, which actually tells what's the issue, what's the actual issue actually, and similar you get all you get same kind of step breakdown for each of these ones. Now we will, so this window over here helps you to filter out the runs if you want to filter out these runs based on some some particular error type, so you can do that as well. So in here I will just go with the tool called issue. So you need at least 5 runs which should be affected by this particular issue. So I'll be just going with the tool called issue. I'll select this and click on this debug button, and finally this is again some metadata that is that could be helpful, and I'll just click on this button, confirm and continue, and I'll just press this button now, go to insights. Now it will start generating our insights, so we just have to wait for some time. I've already created a few insights, but this time we'll go with this latest one and see what has actually happened inside our agentic AI system. So finally our insights are ready now. We'll just click on this full insight button and we'll dive deep into this. So it's a flow graph showing you the whole flow, and total affected ones were actually 6. That means this particular tool called issue affected 6 of your runs, and this is a root cause analysis which actually shows you what actually went wrong, which correctly identifies that the tool issue was due to the incorrect format for the add to cart tool, which actually led to the incorrect tool input format error. So we have been given with some few next steps, and we have 2 of them. We can you can go either of them. You can check out all of them and see what actually suits your requirement, and which is more smoother or simpler for you to implement. So I'll just click on this view button and we'll dive deep into this. So it says that it tells us to update the add to cart tool description to enforce a single unambiguous input format. So the error is basically due to the incorrect input format being passed by the LLM model, and due to which the failure occurred multiple times. So it says that this is our current description, which is actually leading to the failure, and it tells us to update this particular tool description with this one. So I'll just simply copy this description from here. We'll go back to the code, and this is our add to cart tool, and this is our current description. I'll just go and remove this one and I'll paste it. You paste the same description being recommended by LLUMO. So I'll just paste it over here, and now we can run our chatbot and see if anything improves. Let's see if error is resolved or not. So I'll just take the same query that were leading to the failure. I'll copy this query, I'll paste it over here and see if the error is resolved or not. Okay, so this query has been successfully implemented. You can see that this query was actually leading to a failure again and again, but this time after the recommendation, after the implementation of the recommendation by LLUMO, I am able to resolve this issue. And let's try with one more query and see if this is persistent or not. Okay, so now this time also the query has been successfully executed. So congratulations, our issue has been resolved. So LLUMO not only helps you debug your RAG or agentic systems, but also provides you helpful insights on how you can actually solve that particular issue. So if you're also facing similar kind of issues and you're not aware of what needs to be done to solve that particular error in your systems, so LLUMO could be very helpful. Congratulations, now you know how the issue will be resolved just by integrating the LLUMO SDK. Thanks for watching the video. Have a nice day.